Good afternoon, football fans. Chris here with Jagerbombs Fantasy Sports, daily fantasy sports rankings, and FanShare Sports to bring you a DFS NFL tutorial video. So we're into week 3 of the NFL season. I've done some tweaks to the sheet going into this season. I finally got most of it completed here, so I wanted to put together a quick video showing you some of the different tabs on the sheet, how you can use them for your research each and every week. I'm going to try and keep this fairly short. If you have questions following the video, please hit me up in our Discord, and you can jump into our Discord for free if you're a new member, just want to check things out. Ask some questions, talk to other members. You can grab that link in the video description below, and I will see you in Discord. With that, let's jump right in here. So this is going to be the main tab that you're going to see each and every week when you open the sheet. It is the team matchups tab. So we've got all the matchups over here. Thursday night football, I've got it labeled here which slate it is. Home team is always going to be on the bottom. We've got Vegas information showing who's the favorite total in that game, projected points for each team. Then we move over and we can look at the offense, defense, offensive line, and fantasy points against tabs. So for offense, we've got each team's pace ranking. That is how many seconds per play they're running, just to see who is maybe running a faster pace offense versus other teams, if you want to look at that. Then we've got team pass and rush percentages. Showing you how much a team passes versus obviously rushing. We've then got overall offensive ranks. We've got passing ranks, rushing ranks, and then we jump into the defensive side of things with the overall rank, passing rank, rushing rank, and then we look at the offensive and defensive lines in terms of rushing O-line. So, protecting, pass blocking, that sort of thing. And then we look at the same thing on the defensive side. And when we get into the defensive tab here, I'll show you how I kind of use that each week to kind of pick out my defenses as well. And then we've got fantasy points again. So if you're looking at Pittsburgh specifically, these rankings that you see here are Cleveland's defense versus QBs, wide receivers, tight ends, and running backs. So this is where I start my research each week. I'm looking at team totals. I'm looking at spreads. And then I'm kind of comparing the teams' offenses versus defenses and that sort of thing, pace, teams that are passing, just to kind of get a look at which teams I'm going to want to be targeting once I jump into each individual tab, which we will do right now. We'll look at the quarterback tab. So on each individual tab, to the left of each player, you're going to find projections. That comes from DFSR. With a little bit of tweak of my own here as well. So you're going to see those projections in here. Those are going to change throughout the week. As more information comes in, as we go ahead and do some audits on those sort of things. Then you've got the player, the team, DraftKings main slate salary. We've also got showdown salary, which I cover Thursday night football, Sunday night football, and Monday night football. All your primetime showdowns are on there as well. You can see there's Thursday, there's the showdown pricing for that. Then we've got the same Vegas information that we talked about on the team matchups tab. Then we're going to scroll over and we're going to look at the individual statistics. These are now turned over to 2022 stats. So we've got games for quarterbacks. We've got passing attempts, completions, completion percentage, yards, touchdowns, all your regular stuff. Then we've got yards per attempt, yards per completion, how many attempts per game. So that's definitely volume is something that comes into my decision making each and every week. Yards per game, that's passing yards per game, and air yards per attempt. So that's a stat, just kind of shows you how much the ball is in the air for each quarterback. Whether they're throwing short passes, there's not going to be a lot of air yards. If they're airing it out down the field, for instance, we look at Lamar Jackson. He's been chucking it down the field quite a bit so far this year. So no surprise there that he's kind of leading the way in terms of air yards per attempt. Then we've got rushing for the quarterbacks, rushing attempts on the season, how many rushing yards each quarterback has, their yards per attempt when they're rushing, attempts per game, yards per game, defensive rushing yards per game again. So that looks at the opponent. So for Lamar Jackson, looking at New England, they're not allowing a lot of rushes, whereas Miami is allowing 59.5 rushing yards per game to their opponent's quarterbacks, which is good for Josh Allen because he's a rushing quarterback. So that might be a matchup we want to target here in week 3. And then we slide over and we look at just some team ranks. We've got the team passing percentage, pace again, team ranking in terms of overall passing offense, opponent defensive rank in terms of passing yards per game given up, the differential there. So just kind of gives you a small indicator showing you a good matchup versus bad matchup when looking at the team's passing versus the opponent's defensive passing ranks. Then we've got the O-line ranks. Now for quarterbacks, this is going to be your pass protection for O-line. Not obviously we're not looking at rushing, and then the opponent's defensive line rank as well. So then we got fantasy points against quarterbacks. So you can look at that there. So moving on into the running back tab, pretty much the same thing here. Now we get into this depth chart. This is a new column that comes into the running back, wide receiver, and tight end tab. So I go through and do depth chart updates. You can go check those out. I've got them here team by team, and I go through this each and every week. Kind of just updating the depth charts as, there's obviously going to be changes, injuries, that sort of thing. New players stepping up into bigger roles. So that is going to be updated there. So that's where you're going to see the depth chart. So each player is going to have the designation there. Then we've got the DK and FanDuel projections. Same as we've got the player, team, pricing, showdown pricing, Vegas information, and then we get into the actual statistics. We've got games played, attempts, yards, touchdowns, yards per attempt, attempts per game, yards per game. Then we get into the receiving side for the running backs as well. How many targets per game on the season. Once we get into a few more, I got that targets broken down per game over the last 4, so we can kind of have like a current form type look at targets for running backs. Target percentage, so that is team. What percentage of the targets is that player getting on their team? So obviously Christian McCaffrey is quite high here. David Montgomery is quite high. They don't really have a lot of receivers in Chicago, so you're going to see David Montgomery pretty high. But those are your running backs that are getting a lot of the receiving work. And on PPR, full PPR formats like DraftKings, that is going to be a very important stat that I look at as well. So then about receptions, yards per target. So that can kind of give us a look at upside. If whether the running back's just getting a quick dump off, right around the line of scrimmage, or whether those running backs are actually running routes down the field. That's one that you can look at. Touchdowns. So then we've got total of the rushing and receiving, which is, total touches per game, total touches for the season, touches per game, total scrimmage yards here, yards per touch, yards per game. Then we get into some red zone usage. Now I've changed this up a little bit this year. Had a lot of data on here last year in terms of red zone information. So I've kind of really reduced that a little bit. We're looking at rushing attempts in the red zone. What percentage of rushing attempts in the red zone of that team, each individual team. And then we've got targets inside the red zone, and that is inside the 20-yard line. Team target percentage, and then total opportunities inside the red zone. So as you can tell here, Jonathan Taylor leads the way with 7 opportunities inside the red zone so far this year. Probably would be higher, but Indy hasn't really got into the red zone a whole bunch. And then we've got the team rank, same thing as the quarterback tab. So we get into wide receivers, pretty much the same thing again. We've got the depth chart designation, DK and FanDuel projections. We've got the player, team, pricing, showdown pricing, Vegas information. Same information here as we've seen with the running backs in terms of receiving, targets, receptions. We've got some advanced stats for the receivers over here as well. We've got yak yards, which is yards after the catch. So it kind of shows you players that maybe want to catch the ball, that they are breaking out and getting extra yards after they catch the ball. We've got ADOT, which is average depth of target. So that kind of shows you, again, whether a player is catching the ball close to the line of scrimmage or whether they're being targeted downfield. So if you're looking for upside, this is one that I definitely look at for like GPP formats and stuff. As we can see here, Terry McLaurin, 15.3 average depth of target. So he's running routes 10 to 20 yards down the field on average, right in between there at 15 yards, while A.J. Brown, a little bit more of a possession receiver, is only an ADOT of 5.6. So he's catching the ball a lot closer to the line of scrimmage than, say, Terry McLaurin, Mike Evans, Keenan Allen, players like that. So then again, we've got red zone targets and percentage of red zone targets for that player and his team. Then we've got the team ranks over here as well. Tight end is exactly the same as the wide receiver tab. And then we'll jump over to defense here. We've got each defense. We've got the slate, main slate salaries. Now, Vegas information, I'm looking at the spread is the same. The total is the same. But over on the defensive tab here, I'm looking at the opposition points projection. So I'm looking at, for the Bears here, what is Houston's point projection? 21.8, and that's why those are going to be green. Obviously, we're going to want to target teams that aren't going to score a lot of points. Now, that is just scratching the surface on our defense. Talked about it quite a bit in chat so far this year. We've got points per game rank defensive points per games allowed rank, obviously. So Tampa Bay's number one here, allowing the least amount of points per game through the first 2 weeks. And then we've got the opponent's offense. We've got the passing ranks, the rushing ranks for both of those teams. And then we get into what I really start breaking down in terms of picking my defenses here. This is sacks for each team. So we're looking at Tampa Bay. They've got 10 sacks so far. They blitz 30% of the time. The opponent here has allowed 7 sacks so far this season, which is a sack percentage of 6.1%. That is like how many sacks per dropback. And then we've got takeaways. So Tampa Bay is also their second here in terms of takeaways with 6. And Green Bay has given the ball up 3 times. So they've turned the ball over 3 times. But the key one that I'm looking at, on top of obviously sacks, obviously takeaways versus turnovers, that's something that's going to be huge because we're looking for that kind of upside with our defenses here, is the D-line versus O-line information. So we've got, and then the differential. So we're looking at the team D-line, the opponent's O-line ranking, and then the differential between the two. So we've got some really good matchups this week. And to break that down, let's look at Buffalo versus Miami. Buffalo is now the 4th ranked defensive line versus Miami is the 30th ranked offensive line in terms of pass protection, which is a differential of 26. So this differential tab just really points you in the direction of which defense has a really good matchup on the offense versus defensive line, which is upside for sacks for sure. Obviously going to help create turnovers there as well. Another one here is going to be New Orleans as number 3 versus Carolina number 25. The Rams number 6 versus the Arizona number 26. So we've got 1, 2, 3, and a 4th one down here, Carolina versus New Orleans as well. Number 7 versus number 27. 4 matchups this week of a plus 20 differential or better. So that's something to keep track of as well. Like I said, you've also got the depth chart tab. We've got DK tiers on here. I don't have those pricing aren't up or those tiers aren't generated by DraftKings yet. I believe that comes out on Wednesday. I will have that uploaded. I also have my rankings for each tier here. And then there's going to be some other tabs for research as well, looking a little bit more into these numbers, your offense and your defense and your defensive line and your fantasy points against. You can break it down a lot more. If you want to research that, those tabs are available as well. But if you have any questions, make sure to hit me up in Discord. Again, you can get in for free. Just grab the Discord link in the description below the video. And if you want to become a member, get access to our cheat sheet every week. All of my picks start going up late Tuesday night and into Wednesday, and they're updated throughout, right up until lock. And then I have a full rankings tab, ranking my top 5 to 10, sometimes wide receivers. I get into the top 15 players at every position. I look at my top stacks, my top defenses, all that sort of stuff. All that starts populating on Thursday and Friday, going into the main slate on the weekend. And like I said, I also cover Thursday night, Sunday night, and Monday night football showdown slates and have rankings for those as well. So if you want to join our winning team over at Jagerbombs Fantasy Sports, head over to www.patreon.com/Jagerbombs. You can join our NFL package for $10 a month, or you can jump in and grab our all sports package for $20 a month. We are currently covering, I think it's somewhere in the range of 10 to 12 different sports. We've got 4 different coaches. NHL is starting soon. NBA is starting soon. We've got Dane covering tennis, Kenny covering UFC right now. Dane also covers soccer. We cover PGA. The season just got underway here again. Baseball's kind of wrapping up. We got a lot going on over at Jagerbombs Fantasy Sports. Jump in, and I'll see you in chat. Have a great day, everyone.